Okay, hi everybody. So we're here today with Guy Kawasaki as our guest. Hey Guy, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So I'm just going to keep the screen on you because you're our main focus, and
Okay.
we're going to be talking this week about social media content. So the students are already familiar with you thanks to we have the required reading of your book, and then your name is on my
Thank
book,
you.
and then our third book that we have. I know that you like this book too. Is Ask Gary Vee. So
Good.
those are our three books that we're using, but we also have guest speakers like you giving your expert knowledge. So I thought we'd start off about Alltop and tell us what our students should know about Alltop and why, as a social media manager, we should use it.
Yes. So all top stands for all the topics, and what we do is we we aggregate content from all the blogs and websites that we can organize by topic. So, for example, if you wanted to stay on top of social media, you would go to socialmedia.alltop.com. And we have about 1,100 of these topics ranging from hockey.alltop.com to politics.alltop.com to zoology.alltop.com. And why this is significant for your students is because if they want to curate content for a specific area, hard to imagine there's a more efficient way than to use Alltop, because we've already aggregated the last 5 stories from each of these blogs and websites into one single place that you can scan through very fast. And that's the whole goal. It's not like Flipboard or Feedly where we're trying to be pretty. We're trying to be efficient. We only show the headline.
Okay, great. And then if you have a blog, it's also cool to be listed on Alltop.
Yes. Yes.
And so there's directions on how to do that on the site. And you actually created Alltop.
Yeah, I'm a co-founder of the company, yes.
Okay. So I think that's a great tool to use as a social media manager. So the next question is, so you wrote The Art of Social Media. We're using it for our class. It was about a year ago that it came out. And so there's new developments constantly, of course, in social media. So what would you add to The Art of Social Media with these new developments?
You mean, what would I change in the book?
Well, what would you maybe change in the book, or maybe what's not in the book because new things have come out that you had?
Well, the most important thing that's not in the book is Facebook Live. The book was written and published before Facebook Live existed, and I think Facebook Live is the best way to foster engagement these days. So that's a hole in that book, honestly.
And what about Google Plus? What are your thoughts on Google Plus? Did they change?
Google Plus, that's the place I have the most followers. And I don't see that much engagement anymore. I really loved Google Plus. My number one go-to site really is Facebook right now.
And so Google Plus in our class, the past couple semesters, I actually dedicated a half a week on it. So now this semester we are barely even touching it. The way we position it is that it's owned by Google, so we can't ignore it, but it's not truly that much of a social network.
Yeah, so we agree, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
Well, using a tool like I use Social Champ, but Social Champ or Buffer or Hootsuite or Sprout, you can write a post once and deploy it in multiple areas. So I don't think there's any harm in saying, all right, so I'm going to post this to Facebook and Google Plus. You might as well.
Definitely.
That's what I do.
Yeah, if it's easy to do and the traffic is good, why not?
Why not?
Right. So what are some of your favorite social media content tips?
By far, the most important tip is that every time you post, there should be a picture or video with it. That you can't just post plain text anymore. And I also think that you can repeat tweets, repeat posts much more than most people do. I repeat tweets like 4 times. Yesterday, very interesting, because of a mistake that I made, I posted the same thing to Facebook 4 times in a row within minutes.
Wow.
And very interesting, each one of them got a reach of about 6, 7, 8,000, each of them. And there were no complaints that, why'd you repeat this 4 times? So, I don't know for certain that the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 people were not the same 4 times, but it seems to me if they were the same people who got it, somebody would complain. So all of this leads me to wonder, what's wrong with repeating Facebook posts too?
Right.
because, you know, you can either have 5,000 views or 20,000 views. I mean, guess which one is better? So that was a very interesting data point. So it's about repetition. I think people don't push it hard enough.
Yeah, they're afraid to repeat. They're
Yeah,
afraid
they
that their
really
audience is going to notice it when really the audience doesn't notice it because not everybody's there at the same time.
Well, you know, they also think, well, in my case, you know, when I did it, when I quadrupled it, the audience was there. It was the same time. I mean, it was within minutes. So, you know, obviously, well, some people said, well, the reason why this worked for you guys because you're a guy and you can get away with it, but most people can't get away with it. I disagree. I think anybody could get away with it. And I also would say that, you know, this is a very good philosophical perspective that you should try stuff like this because everybody assumes you can't repeat something. And so nobody tries and discovers that, maybe you can repeat stuff.
Definitely, definitely. So that brings me, we're talking about Facebook, Facebook Live. So you've been really big on Facebook Live and I've been watching a lot of you probably go a couple times a week, right? Yeah. So what are your tips on, so there's the live content and then there's the after live content that people can go back to. So what are some of your tips on using that as a content strategy?
Sure. Facebook Live for me has been the most effective way to foster engagement. And I do it in so many different ways. And at one level, I just have an iPhone, right? But usually, I never kind of do that anymore. Now I have an iPhone with at least a gimbal to make it smoother. But most of the time, I'm using something called Wirecast. And with Wirecast, I'm able to really script the show with pre-roll, then the desktop camera like we're using now. Then I can bring in the video from my phone or my tablet. Then I can go back to the desktop camera. Then I can play a post roll. It's kind of a production for me at this point.
Have you always done it that way, or when you first started, did you just do it
No, when I first started, I just held up a phone like everybody else. Yeah. But I just wanted to have more control over what was happening. And I saw it being so powerful that I thought, well, you know, it's just too amateurish. Like even large brands today, they're just holding a phone up. I mean, it's kind of a joke.
But would you say that's better than not doing it at all?
Yes, absolutely.
Because what I hear from the conferences that I go to, the brands that I work with, I mean, they're afraid to go live. They're just plain out scared to do it.
What are they afraid of?
They're not planned. They're not going to look good. They're not going to send the right message. So what do you say to that?
I say man up.
I agree. I agree. So what's the difference between Facebook Live and Facebook Mentions?
Well, Facebook Mentions is an app for a smartphone that, let's see, it is for a subset of people, verified public figures to use.
You're one of them, and Peg is one of them, right?
Yes. Okay. So that they never miss mentions of themselves. And so I think only about a couple thousand people in the world can use mentions. So there's mentions.
Okay.
And Facebook Live is obviously completely different because Facebook Live is not an app. It's a service. And then there's Facebook Pages, which is for people who manage pages to use. And then there's regular Facebook app. So it's kind of confusing, quite frankly.
Yeah, it is. And so I was noticing you and Peg were talking about Facebook Mentions, and the Facebook Mentions people maybe got access to the two-way. Did you get first access?
Yes. So the several thousand people who use Facebook Mentions, we are able to create a Facebook Live and then invite somebody on stage with
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when will that be available to everybody else? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Because we could be doing this on Facebook Live right now.
Absolutely.
Which would be
absolutely. Cool. And there's another service being announced this morning from Blue Jeans. And what Blue Jeans is an online video conferencing system.
I was going to use that instead of this today, actually.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
And that's not just for one-to-one. That's for like, you know, you could have like 9 people all over the world on a video conference. And the main one shows in the main area. And then there's the ones who are not talking on the bottom, right? So now that can feed into Facebook Live.
Awesome.
So that is, Facebook itself is doing this where you could have one person in the corner. But if you use Blue Jeans, you could have this, 9 people using Blue Jeans, broadcasting through Facebook Live.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
That's great. So you
Yeah.
guys heard it here, straight from Guy. So we're going to have to check that out for our class for sure. So just moving on to Canva, you are the brand evangelist for Canva. We are using Canva for our class to do all kinds of creative things.
Great.
So what's it like to be the brand evangelist, and how did you connect with Canva?
Yeah. So the way I connected with Canva is actually Peg Fitzpatrick was using Canva on my account. And Canva noticed that I was using Canva, and they reached out to me via Twitter.
Awesome.
And one thing led to another. I really believe that Canva is democratizing design, just like Macintosh democratized computers. And so, this is called Guy's Golden Touch, which is whatever is gold, Guy touches. And it's very easy to be an evangelist for Canva because it's so easy and so useful.
Definitely. Well, I'm a huge fan, and so is everybody in the class. So what are some of your favorite hacks that you can do on Canva as a social media manager?
Well, one of the most powerful features is this magic resize, where you create a graphic once, and then you say, okay, so now I want it for other sizes for other social media platforms. That is very, very useful.
Also, the app just came out.
Yes, the iOS app just came out. And one of the great things about the iOS app is that your iOS app, your iPad app, and your desktop, they're all synced. So if you create something in the iPad, you can access it on the iPhone, and I create it on the iPhone, you can access it on your desktop, create it on the desktop, so you can do all of this. It's not like they're standalone islands. It's not, sometimes a company will have this desktop version that does everything, and then they have this other thing that kind of does a similar thing, but it's completely separate really, and they're just trying to, milk their app market. This is completely synced.
One thing that I noticed with working with the students at UF is that they literally do everything using their iPhone. So they're in Google Docs, they're checking their notes, they're studying, they're doing everything. So I think the Canva app will be a good tip for them for sure.
I can't do that.
I have a hard time doing it too, but I like being able to edit on the fly. But literally they're in Google Docs with me, and it's just second nature to them.
Yeah.
So if you could use, I think I know the answer to this, but let me see. If you could use just one social network and none other, which one would it be?
Facebook by far.
Okay.
No, not even. I don't have to think twice about that. Yeah.
Yeah. There's just Facebook is kind of.
Well, the targeting is so good. The interaction is so good. I have a very good relation with them. Just everything is,
Okay. Yep. That's what I figured. So what are your thoughts on Snapchat?
Oh boy, I can't wrap my mind around Snapchat. It's not like I'm taking pictures of myself and putting dog ears on me, and that kind of stuff. So all those kind of silly things, which I can understand some 12-year-old wants to do, is great, but it has no meaning for me. And with Instagram stories, which I do use,
I see you on that.
I think that is one of the key parts of Snapchat that I would have used, but now it's on Instagram. And there are things about Snapchat I just can't wrap my head around. Like, I don't know how many people follow me on Snapchat. And I don't know if there is a way to tell if,
It's super hard to measure for sure. Yeah. It's fun, but it's super hard to measure, and fun doesn't equate to ROI. Right?
Well, yeah. But, if you're a 12-year-old, you're not caring about ROI, right?
Yeah. But
it's a different world. I don't know. Brands keep saying how great it is to use Snapchat. I don't understand that, because, like, if you are a huge brand and you can buy your way into be one of these suggested things, or you can name a filter or something like that, okay. But how does Guy Kawasaki use Snapchat? I have yet to figure that out.
Yeah. It's still. I think the jury's still out on it. We'll see what happens, right?
Yep.
Okay, so a couple more questions. So social media can be super consuming, and it's hard to balance even if you're not in the social media business like we are. So what do you do to balance work life from being consumed by all the different screens that are around us?
I don't. I mean, this is what I do. This is my job. So, that's like saying to a professional tennis player, well, what do you do to balance your life? You don't. You practice 8 hours a day. I mean, that's your life, right?
I read though that you play hockey to.
I play hockey and I do paddleboarding, but those are distractions from the core of my existence, which is social media.
Maybe that's your recharge too.
Maybe. Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, that's your way to reset. So for the future graduates that are here in the audience today, what advice do you give if they want to have a career in social media?
Well, my advice is that you don't worry too much about your first job, your second job. This is general advice, not just for social media.
Mhm.
And I think that if I were starting a career today, I would realize that in the next 30, 40 years that I'll be working, I'll probably have 10 or 15 jobs. And it'll get to the point where I'm 62, when you're 62, you won't even remember your first job. So, you shouldn't sweat the first job so much, the second job so much. This is going to be a long marathon. Um, do crazy stuff while you're young, because when you're old and you have mortgages and cars and family, it's a whole different world.
Okay, and what about specifically in social media? Is there any credentials they should or shouldn't have, or criteria they should worry or not worry about?
Me personally, I don't think so. I mean, obviously when a company looks at your social media graph, it shouldn't be a stupid looking thing, right? Fix your LinkedIn. If you don't have a good LinkedIn profile, you might as well not exist. So that would be my advice. Fix your LinkedIn profile.
Okay, perfect. Well, Guy, thank you so much. If there's anything else you want to add, please add now. But please follow Guy on Facebook and watch his Facebook lives. They're awesome. And anything else?
That's good. Have a great day over there.
All right. Thank you. You too.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.